The studio lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience as Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana rose abruptly from his chair, his face a storm of raw emotion, and stormed off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned panel and a nation glued to their screens. It was a moment no one saw coming, a fiery showdown with co-host Joy Behar that had escalated from a heated debate into a personal reckoning, exposing the fault lines of politics, pride, and human vulnerability. For weeks, the nation had been buzzing about Kennedy's appearance, a rare opportunity to see the folksy, sharp-witted senator face off with the outspoken liberal voices of daytime television. But as the cameras rolled on that crisp September morning in 2025, no one could have predicted the emotional tidal wave that would follow. The episode began innocently enough. Kennedy, with his trademark drawl and wire-rimmed glasses, settled into the hot seat, his gray hair catching the light as he flashed a disarming smile. The topic was the contentious Epstein files, a subject that had polarized Washington and ignited public outrage. Joy Behar, her red hair framing a face set with determination, leaned forward, her tone laced with skepticism. "Senator, your party's been dragging its feet on releasing those files," she said, her voice cutting through the studio chatter. "Are you telling us you're okay with hiding the truth?" Kennedy's response was measured at first, a defense of procedural delays with a dash of Southern charm, but the tension was palpable. The audience leaned in, sensing the spark that would soon ignite. As the discussion deepened, Behar pressed harder, her questions growing sharper. "This isn't about process, John, it's about accountability," she snapped, her glasses glinting under the studio lights. "People deserve to know who's been protected." Kennedy's jaw tightened, his usual composure fraying as memories of his own battles with corruption in Louisiana flooded back. He'd spent decades fighting for his constituents, often against powerful interests, and the accusation stung. "Joy, I've spent my life pulling back curtains," he retorted, his voice rising. "Don't you dare imply I'm hiding anything." The exchange drew gasps from the audience, but it was only the beginning. Whoopi Goldberg tried to intervene, her calm voice a futile attempt to steer the ship, while Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the storm brewing. The turning point came when Behar, perhaps sensing a weakness, delivered a personal jab. "Maybe you're just too cozy with the old boys club, Senator," she said, her smile edged with sarcasm. "We all know how politics works down there in the bayou." The room froze. Kennedy's face flushed, his mind flashing to the countless nights he'd spent away from his family, the threats he'd endured, the sacrifices made to build a legacy of integrity. For a man who prided himself on his authenticity, the remark felt like a dagger. He leaned forward, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "You don't know me, Joy. You don't know what I've given up to sit here and face you. This isn't a game, it's my life." The audience erupted, some cheering, others murmuring in shock, as the panel struggled to regain control. The confrontation escalated as Kennedy stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "I came here to talk facts, not to be insulted," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I've had enough." Behar, unflinching, fired back, "Then leave if you can't handle the heat." It was the spark that set him ablaze. With a final, piercing look, Kennedy turned and walked off, the sound of his footsteps echoing as the cameras followed him through the studio doors. Behind him, the panel descended into chaos, Whoopi shouting for a break, Joy defending her stance, and the audience buzzing with a mix of admiration and disbelief. The screen cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Social media exploded, clips of the walkout going viral within minutes, with hashtags like #KennedyWalks and #ViewDebate trending worldwide. Backstage, Kennedy paced in a dimly lit green room, his hands trembling as he processed the encounter. He was no stranger to tough debates, but this felt different, personal, raw. Growing up in Louisiana, he'd learned resilience from his parents, who instilled in him a fierce sense of justice despite their modest means. His career had been a series of uphill battles, overcoming skepticism about his folksy style, navigating the cutthroat world of politics, and raising a family under the public eye. That moment with Behar had unearthed a deep well of frustration, a fear that his decades of service might be reduced to a soundbite. His aide, a young woman named Claire with a quiet strength, entered the room, her eyes full of concern. "You okay, Senator?" she asked softly. He shook his head, sinking into a chair. I don't know, Claire. Maybe I let them get to me. As the day wore on, the backlash grew. News outlets dissected the walkout, some praising Kennedy's stand against perceived bias, others criticizing him for abandoning the discussion. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from supporters and critics alike. At home, his wife, Linda, watched the replay with their teenage son, Ethan, who looked up with wide eyes. Dad stood up for himself, Ethan said, a mix of pride and worry in his voice. Linda nodded, her hand resting on his shoulder. He did, but it's going to cost him. She knew the political fallout could be brutal, but she also knew John's heart, his unwavering commitment to doing what he believed was right, even when it hurt. The next morning, Kennedy faced a choice. He could retreat, let the media storm blow over, or he could reclaim the narrative. With Claire's encouragement, he decided to return to The View the following week, a move that shocked the producers and the public. The atmosphere was tense as he sat down again, his eyes meeting Behar's with a newfound resolve. I walked out because I was hurt, he began, his voice steady. But I'm back because I believe in this country's ability to talk, even when it's hard. Behar, to her credit, softened, acknowledging her role in the escalation. I pushed too far, she admitted, a rare vulnerability in her tone. The panel, led by Whoopi, facilitated a dialogue that turned from confrontation to understanding, as Kennedy shared stories of his struggles, late-night calls from constituents, the loss of a close friend to political corruption, the weight of representing a state still healing from its past. The resolution came not in a victory for one side, but in a shared humanity. Kennedy and Behar found common ground in their desire for truth, their differences narrowing as they listened. The audience, once divided, applauded, moved by the raw authenticity of the moment. As the segment ended, Kennedy leaned into the microphone, his voice carrying a message that resonated beyond the studio. We don't have to agree to respect each other, he said. But we do have to keep talking. That's how we heal. The screen faded to black, leaving viewers with a powerful takeaway. In a world of division, courage and compassion could bridge even the widest gaps. For the next few days, the story dominated headlines, but the tone shifted from scandal to inspiration. Kennedy's return became a symbol of resilience, his willingness to face his critics a lesson in grace under pressure. At home, he sat with Linda and Ethan, watching the positive coverage, a quiet pride in his eyes. You showed them who you are, Linda said, squeezing his hand. Ethan grinned, yeah, Dad, you're a fighter. Kennedy smiled, the weight lifting slightly. The journey had been grueling, but it had reaffirmed his purpose, to serve with integrity, no matter the cost. And as the nation reflected on the drama, they were left with a lasting message. Even in the heat of battle, the human spirit could find a path to redemption and unity.